The fear of the absolute. I have been a long-time student of human nature. Half of my life was as an atheist, the latter half as a Christian. I do not see any significant difference between the two groups. On paper, they are polar opposites. Technically, Christians and others ought to have nothing in common, yet they manage to live in the same space with few problems. While there are problems between Christians and others, the conflict in society is often centered on other issues and divisions than on the one between Christians and the world. Now, the events in Eden can be traced to Nimrod and the establishment of the state and to liberalism and feminism. One could link democracy with these factors also. But perhaps the most central feature in this world, at least in the Western world, is the love of freedom. This same impulse is seen in the East, but it is interpreted differently in this paradigm. The East prefers to think of freedom as being free of the West's version of it. However, the West may not voice it in just this way, but most of what the West calls freedom is antithetical to the East. But what is freedom but omniscience? There is no other definition that does it justice. If you could starve to death, or freeze to death or die from sickness, you would not have freedom. What does freedom mean than the possession of eternal life? Eternal life is having absolute power. It is code for the power of God. Only God has freedom. If anything typifies man, it is obligations. If we have a mission, it behooves us to fulfill it. The purpose of man belies the claims we have that we have freedom. No one with a purpose in their life has any conception of freedom. No one who has ambition has freedom. The end does not justify the means, nor does the achievement of the end make what was done to get there right. The purpose of man directs and validates what is done in the name of the purpose. But the purpose of man does not belong to man, nor does it liberate him. The purpose of man enslaves him to a higher calling. Man does not want absolutes. He does not want God or logic, nor does he want there to be moral absolutes. Man does not want to be enslaved to the achievement of a purpose. Mankind wants relativity and contingent truth. The code word for the rejection of God is freedom. If truth is absolute and there is a God who formed logic, mankind has no free will beyond the freedom to do what reason dictates. Man does not reject God, mankind rejects the imposition of logic upon his existence. Mankind rejects absolutes because absolutes are able to judge and condemn what we do. We are not to judge because our judgment is subjective. If we judge by subjective values, that is what we will be judged by. We are judged by the dictates of good and evil, banned by the absolutes of analytical reasoning. According to the nature of absolutes, we are either good or evil. Absolutes do not allow for muddled reasoning or undetermined locations. Moral relativity is akin to a balance sheet that shows neither profit nor loss. The only reason why a person would reject the notion of absolutes is if they reject the notion of winners and losers. If there are no winners or losers, there is no direction and no purpose in life. Winning individual is required if we are to win collectively. How can man have a purpose or a mission if this world has no parameters of methods of validation? A mission or purpose must have a way of mapping our progress towards it. More importantly, what does it mean for God to exist, if God created no priorities? If there are no parameters in this world, what does it even mean to say there is a God? If God is neutral and has no values and imposes no conditions on us, what does it matter if God exists or not? But can perfection be if there are no absolutes? What is the absolute if it is not perfect? What is perfection if not God? There is a logical paradox here that the world can neither face nor resolve. It is easy to reject God, but what are the consequences? Atheists do not see the world collapse, the sun still shines, and the rain still falls, but what is the impact on their psyche? But therein lays the problem, their world is entropic and prone to disassembly. It is not a perfect system, and no one is looking for perfection, in this world, and in fact perfection is a much maligned idea. If things are going bad and perhaps from bad to worse, it is not a startling or necessarily an unexpected observation. At least not from the perspective of people who live in this fallen state of affairs. The problem the spiritually immature person faces is that if there is absolutes, none of us are free to do what we want, and what we do is always open to evaluation. This is not a matter judging anyone. But if someone is supposed to go a mile and they only go half that distance, this is a real measurement and an objective determination of how far the person has fallen short of their objective. But secularists and others do not want their performance to be measured. They want to be evaluated by how they feel. If they feel they have accomplished a lot, then that means they are a success. If they feel things are against them and that they fell short of their goals because of events beyond their control, then whatever the score is, it ought to be considered a win. In other words, those who hate and fear the absolute, hate and fear being evaluated. We see this in many areas, including school and other workplaces. Standards of performance are frowned upon and avoided. It is under these conditions that God, and the idea of perfection, is rejected. The child and the spiritually immature do not want to live according to a standard, which might find them falling below average. Even the conventional idea of beauty is fought against, because those who are of lesser quality do not like a particular standard of beauty to be favored. How many people enjoy looking at nude pics of obese women? This world has systematically been attempting to overthrow all standards. The only thing they leave untouched is emotional reactions. The truth becomes whatever appears good and desirable to them, but they are not the arbitrators of truth. Those who rail against the existence of absolutes, will claim everything is a matter of opinion, that there are no absolute standards for beauty, truth and justice. They are half right, because there are no unqualified standards in the reality they inhabit. They say people who live in glass houses ought not throw stones, but those who live contingently and without fixed principles, ought not discuss what worlds might lay beyond their limited horizon. After all, their entire universe is predicated on their ignorance and inability to know the truth. The problem those who deny the absolute face is that if there is no absolute, how does relativity exist? If there is no final end to things, an absolute end, how is there any direction in life? If perfection does not exist, what does imperfection mean? What is it a failed or inadequate manifestation of? It is easy to reject the existence of the absolute. All one must do is fail or fall short of it. If 4 is the truth of 2 plus 2, there is an infinite number of wrong answers one can choose, but only one right one. It is always easier to fall short and go astray than do the right thing. Without the absolute, there is no right thing, there is no direction to our life. That is the problem for a lot of people. They want to sit in the high seat of God. They want to be the ultimate judge of the worth of their life. They do not wish their life to have purpose, because if it had a purpose, other than pleasure, they could be judged. We are not to judge lest we be judged. This is a reference to an absolute measure, not a personal or subjective one. Matthew 7 verse 1-7 Judge not, that ye be not judged. 2 For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. 3 And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? 4 Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and, behold, a beam is in thine own eye? 5 Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. 6 Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. Give not what is holy unto the dogs is simply an allusion to this same topic. Live by the absolute. Our predilections are not sufficient to guide us. If we judge according to our personal benefit, so will others judge us by their personal wants and needs. This gives us the law of the jungle. Those who have the power will be able to impose their will and values on the rest. That is what we are now in. The state mediates disputes and creates law to try and modify the doctrine of red in tooth and claw. But violence breaks out all over the place and crime is rampant, because for a lot of people, winning is everything.